Next, what I'm going to do is demonstrate a number of setups to get to the double leg takedown. I'll probably, for the most part, be doing a drop step where I'm actually going to be cutting some distance as opposed to simply just dropping down low, although I will explain if there are different setups that perhaps simply dropping your level is more advantageous. First, I'll demonstrate a simple forehead tap. Colby and I get in our stances. Distance is crucial. It's very difficult for me to attack on many of my setups if I'm too far away. So I typically want to be in a range where I can touch my opponent, at least in more of the grappling type arts. So I get in my stance. I'm going to pop him in the forehead. In jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, of course, you can give him a harder pop than you can in wrestling. I'm basically going to try to get my hand in front of his eyes while simultaneously lowering my level and attacking a double leg. I'm going to finish it to the ground, and again I'm going to review keeping my arm in tight to avoid the guard. Notice where I keep this arm here is straight and up. It's not down here. I keep it up. And also notice that my shoulder is right in the pocket here. And my weight is on Colby's lower abdomen. I'm going to stay here for just a moment, and then I'm going to switch. While I'm sort of camping out there while I explain the technique, of course, I want to be fairly quick when I finish up, as opposed to just staying there. Next, what I want to demonstrate is the basic head pop or the head rake. Again, as we discussed in the first module, my goal here is not to pop his head down, but to bring my hand and my arm laterally to the mat. I'm going to cup right here at the occiput of his head, and by doing that, that's going to, one, move him slightly down, because if I hit him hard here and slide my hand, that's going to drop his head, but it's also going to move his weight just slightly forward, and that gives me the opportunity to attack. I'm simultaneously lowering my level as I do that rake. So we're in here. I'm going to pop and finish. Again, always keeping my arm tight. When I finish, I'm going to keep this arm straight and not down, but kind of pointed up at an angle, and that makes it very difficult for Colby to get me in guard. And I simply transfer to prevent the guard, come across his body here. A couple things you'll notice on many of these double legs that I attack regardless of the setup. I need to first lower my level. I need to cut the distance. I want to make contact with my shoulder across the lower part of his abdomen or his belt line. I want to make sure that my trajectory is not down, but through Colby. And when I attack, initially, my direction is this way, but then I'm going to cut about 45 degrees. So, from this angle, we set up, rake, and finish. You'll notice, lower my level, go straight in, I cut roughly 45 degrees. Another important thing about the double leg. When I do attack and I make contact in this position here, first, I never want to stop here. We're going to go over what to do if I get stuck, but my ultimate goal, the root technique of a finish at least, is for me to come in and either go straight through and drive him down, or preferably cut at a slight angle about 45 degrees to try to avoid the guard. One thing that's important though, in terms of this leg that I'm controlling. Remember before I said it's crucial that as I make contact here, I shift the weight off of both of these legs, which should be about 50% equally distributed between his two legs. I need to be transferring that weight as I cut the angle. Now, a little thing here that I think is important. I'm never, ever trying to pull this leg in like this as I'm driving in that direction. When I block that leg, I'm just blocking it and I'm going to drive through it. I'm not trying to pull the leg to me. All my direction, all my energy is going through. I'm tripping him up with this arm here. But I'm not actually trying to pull the arm in. I'm not actually trying to pull his leg in as I'm driving through. I just come down and block here, and then I'm going to run over this arm. It's crucial when you attack on a double leg takedown for all your energy to be going into your opponent and to continue driving through. I don't want anything getting stuck on the mat. I don't want my trajectory down on the mat. Likewise, I don't want part of my energy going this way as I cut the angle and part of it coming in the opposite direction. Everything is in the same direction once I initiate my attack. First straight in, then I cut the corner. Next, this is a fairly common position where your opponent or partner is blocking your shoulders with both of his arms, and we're going to say that his arms are relatively straight as opposed to being fairly flexed. So this position, they're going to be relatively straight. Most typically, if an opponent's or my partner's arms are like this, I'm having some energy or some weight placed into me. Typically, they aren't going to be perfectly neutral with their weight pretty much over their feet. Typically, their center of gravity is going to be slightly ahead of their feet. And typically, too, of course, I'm going to need to be pushing back, else I'm going to be retreating. This particular setup to a double leg, it's more important that I lower my weight or my level very quickly. Now, a mistake people make with this type of a setup is they try to push the arms up while they're coming through. That's not so important. What's more important is just being able to block and come underneath. That's what's more crucial. And at that point, I'm going to come in. I want my energy, once I get down, to be coming in parallel to the mat in that type of a trajectory. I don't want to be spending energy trying to do a military press as I'm driving in. So I'm just trying to keep the arms from being able to push down so I can duck under them, and then I'm going to attack. And a mistake most people make when they're learning this type of a technique is there's a lot of energy pushing this up as they're coming in. And you'll notice the harder I push up, the more tendency I have to change my trajectory down into the mat. So I'm really just interested in blocking so that I can get underneath it, and then I want my trajectory straight into my partner, my opponent. So Colby is in position here. I'm going to block here, and then I'm going to attack. Now, for the rest of these takedowns, I'm going to just come into this double leg position here, as opposed to continuing to knock my good buddy Colby down here. But remember, my goal, as with the first couple that were demonstrated, is to attack in, chop, and drive through, all in basically one series, all in one continuous series of movements or motions. I'm typically not going to ever try to stop on the mat, although we'll talk about what happens later when my opponent stops my initial attack and I have decent position, but nonetheless my momentum is stopped, and then I'll have to figure out what to do from there with finishes from my knees. But even though I'm demonstrating that I'm stopping on my knees right now, again, it's just like the first couple where we drive through. That's the route. That's what you should always be trying for first. Again, Colby's pushing on me. Typically, if he's not pushing on me, I want to lean into him and get a little bit of energy back. It's important, too, that I don't pop lower than his elbows, because if I do, he can drop his elbows and block as I come in. So I want to catch him right at his elbows or just a hair above. And again, I'm not going to be pushing up so much as just blocking and coming underneath. And you can practice it that way from here, just boom, lowering your level. and then I attack. Let me do one more. Okay, now, the next situation is when my opponent or partner is posting with one arm, again, fairly straight. He might be hand fighting or just keeping his other arm down to defend. What I'm going to do in this situation is I'm going to quickly grab his wrist. I'm not so much going to be grabbing like this. I just want to make a very small circle through the wrist that can capture the wrist, and so that the hand can't be pulled out. If this circle here is smaller than his hand is, he ought not to be able to pull it out, at least right away. I just need to control it for a moment. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duck, but this time I'm going to be bringing the arm slightly to the side. So I'm going to grab here. I'm not just coming up. As I'm lowering my level, I'm kind of pulling him slightly forward. At the same time, I'm lowering my level to this position here. Again, this is a little bit different type of a motion. It's more emphasizing lowering your level than moving in, and this is obviously a very close range type of an attack. So in review, he's pushing. I just grab this quickly, so it's a small circle. At the same time, I'm kind of holding it here so I can just get below it. And I'm not just going to come straight in at this point. I'm going to twist and pull it this way slightly, lowering my level. And at that point, I'm going to come in.